With SoFi Active Invest, you can get in on IPOs prior to them being traded on the stock exchange, access alternative investment funds that include venture capital, real estate, and commodities, and trade stocks, ETFs, and options, all on an intuitive platform that's easy to use. Plus, you'll even get a chance at up to $1,000 in stock when you fund a new Active Invest account with at least $50. Brokers and active investing products offered through SoFi Securities LLC, member FINRA, SIPC. For a full listing of fees associated with SoFi Invest, please view our fee schedule. Investments are not FDIC insured, are not bank guaranteed, may lose value. Probability of a member receiving $1,000 is a probability of 0.028%. For more information, including funds, investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses, please head over to sofi.com/invest. Before we begin, please note that this conversation may include forward-looking statements. These statements are subject to risks and uncertainties, which are described in the company's SEC filings and investor relations materials. The views expressed in this discussion are solely those of the guest and do not necessarily represent the views of the host or the show. This discussion is for informational purposes only and should not be taken as investment, legal, or tax advice, nor as a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any security. You should always consult with a qualified financial advisor or tax professional before making investment decisions. The host and guest disclaim any liability for losses that may result from reliance on this discussion. Remember, all investing involves risk, and past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Welcome to Marketopolis, at the crossroads of Wall Street and the internet. In a feed-driven era powered by Reddit, Robinhood, YouTube, X, and many other platforms, retail investors drive the conversation online. Corporate access has been blown wide open, conversations move at the speed of social platforms, and CEOs, IROs, and comms teams are rewriting the investor relations playbook in real time. I'm Matt Giuano, CEO of Stakeholder Labs. Each episode, I talk with public company CEOs and top operators to uncover fresh strategies for communicating and competing in today's markets. Whether you hold a single share or just love the story, you'll take away practical lessons for navigating modern public markets. This is Marketopolis. Let's get into it. In today's episode, we're going inside the AREN Group, the company behind Surfer, Powder, Parade, TheStreet, and Athlon Sports, with CEO Paul Edmondson. Paul just stepped into the role in February, and he's steering a classic meets modern media platform that's posting 4 straight quarters of positive net income. We get into the operating model that turned legacy IP into growth, why AREN is leading hard into social-first investor communications, and how he thinks about capital allocation, including that $3 million share repurchase authorization. If you care about where media, markets, and retail investors meet, this one's for you. Hi, Paul. Great to have you on Marketopolis. Excited to have this conversation today. I grew up reading Surfer magazine and saw that that's one of the properties you guys have, but looking forward to learning a lot more about the entire portfolio and the business that you guys are building. So maybe to kick things off, do you want to introduce yourself and the AREN Group?
Yeah, Matt, thanks for having us today. Paul Edmondson, I'm the CEO of the AREN Group. I've been in the chair just since February, so really not that long of a time. The AREN Group is it's a really interesting company. We hold several different brands. So you mentioned Surfer, Powder, Bike Mag. Those are some of our adventure brands. We also have some really established brands that have been around since the 1940s, like Parade Magazine. Talking today, I know a little bit about the AREN stock and things like that. We also own and operate TheStreet. And then an area that's really close and to my heart, which is sports. And we are the operators of athlonsports.com as well. It's been around since the 1960s as well. Preseason, magazine coverage, newsstand, and obviously we operate mostly digitally today. But you can think about us as we operate in very specific verticals. We're largely an ad monetization business, so programmatic ads. We have a really nice affiliate marketing promotion business as well. And we're out acquiring new businesses all the time that sort of fit into one of these verticals.
That's a great breakdown. I'd love to maybe go a layer deeper and hear about your journey. I saw Hub Pages and then also the AREN Group being the Maven. And what does that look like the past few years?
Well, that's I think you're always wondering, like, how did I end up here? And as we were talking a little bit earlier, was Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, and it was sort of like the .com era was coming about, and I made my way up to the Bay Area as a developer, and I spent a handful of years doing various startup entrepreneurial type things. Had a little stint in the music business at Microsoft. And then I founded Hub Pages, and Hub Pages was a blogging platform. It was at a time where we really thought that community blogging, sort of something that would sit in between like a Wikipedia and a blogger or WordPress or those types of things at the time. And we built that business, and then we ultimately sold it in 2018 to what was called the Maven at the time. And that really began my journey there. So I've now been at, since we've rebranded to the Arena Group, here about 7 years, and running all sorts of pieces of the business, from Powder and Surfer to now the entire company. So,
Wow, that's quite the journey. What's that transition been like to this seat of CEO? How have you embraced this new role? A lot of the CEOs I talk to, they talk about having two jobs. You have to run the company, you have to navigate the public markets. Curious to hear how you've approached that.
yeah, it's probably a little bit unique, just given the amount of history that I have in the business, and the the time I've spent with all the different brands. So I've been intimately involved with TheStreet, and like I said, Powder and Surfer. Um, I do. I can see why people think about it, splitting it in two different ways. I think I tend to think of it more as just, how do you operate this in the best way possible. And there's components to, we'll do investor calls, and we have several of those coming up over the next few weeks. But we'll be very hands-on with our editorial strategy and the acquisitions and all the things like that. I think probably the biggest change is just it's the amount of time that you have for each individual thing. And so you have to just be better at and more disciplined with having the right people on the seats, which is one of those kind of famous adages. And so really getting the team just right, setting a pretty clear direction on where everybody wants to go, so you can row the boat, and then making sure that you're always, paying attention to whatever the most important thing is of that day, that week type of thing.
Yeah, it's a balance, and time is a finite resource. I guess kind of to that end, as you think about translating the work that you're doing as a company to the markets, how do you think about telling that story? How do you think about approaching, you mentioned investor conferences. How do you approach that type of investor relations or financial comms motion?
It's a really, really good question. Our company, I think we have 4 quarters now that we put up positive net income, so profitability. I think it's really, really important to demonstrate history and to, continue to execute and all those types of things. So you have that track record. And I think, a lot of the times the market kind of takes care of itself. I know you've been out there as an entrepreneur and doing things like that. And when you see sort of like how the market values a business, over time, it tends to get it right. I think for us, and where our focus really is just being really, really disciplined. It's knowing who we are, what kind of brands play well with our expertise, what are the areas that we can really grow and do things super capital efficiently. And then when we talk to the markets or we talk to investors, we'll talk a lot more today about our brands and our IP and our model. And so one of the great things about Parade or Athlon or TheStreet is there is just a lot of legacy and brand recognition behind it. So Parade is a really, really good example. And we've created a unique content model that allows us to create really great content, to scale it across our entire business, and really leverage our IP. So as we continue to grow and tell our story, and whether we're creating content for commerce or creating breaking news or doing features, it's really about leveraging our IP and managing our business that way.
Given that you guys have had this strong run this year and you have demonstrated that this track record, I'm curious on that side of the business and owning the street and having that touch point with market type content. where do you look to get a sense or a feel? Is this something where you're on message boards like Reddit or X or YouTube, or maybe you subscribe to certain newsletters to get a feel of where the macro markets are at? What's your information diet look like through a financial lens?
I've always been, I've been very interested in sort of personal finance and investing pretty much my entire professional career. I spend a tremendous amount of time on Reddit and a tremendous amount of time on X or Twitter and looking at, Twitter finance type things, or X finance now, whatever you want to call it. We're very adept at following conversations and even places like Discord as well. You can really find these micro communities that are talking about, as the AREN group, as a micro cap stock. So we do follow those conversations super closely, and pay attention just more broadly to how people are thinking or talking about a particular company and how we can position it with them.
No, I love that. I think a lot of what we're seeing is investor relations teams, corporate comms teams, exec teams that are using that for signal. And it's giving them a feedback loop where they can tell their story based on how the market is interpreting them. And it's more and more social. On that personal finance point, curious, are you in your personal life, are you making investments? Do you use Robinhood or Schwab or E-Trade? What's your go-to out there?
I think, man, it was many, many years ago, but when I read A Random Walk Down Wall Street, read that book, and I've given all my kids A Simple Path to Wealth as another sort of like jumping off point for reading about, kind of investing and saving and those types of things. But I'm pretty basic. I'm a large indexer. So yeah, that's kind of the simple path. But I think as both an investor in some startups and real estate and a handful of other things, I think there's a small amount of I'd say that I allocate to do some more exploratory type investing. So
yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And maybe putting yourself in the shoes of retail investors. You mentioned kind of being on X, being on Reddit. How do you imagine people discover the AREN group as investors? Are they subscribers to Surfer, TheStreet, or Parade? Obviously, some of those lean more financially oriented. But how do you guys think about retail investors discovering your business?
I think one of the advantages that we have, and it's something that we actually really wanted to lean into, is we're a media company. We tell stories for a living. We create really great social content for a number of our brands. We have millions and millions of followers across Facebook, Instagram, it goes on, TikTok. And so we really wanted to lean into that and tell our story. So we've put out some really great content with folks on Instagram. We've done, you can probably see some of the stuff that we put out on our LinkedIn as well. So we've taken a sort of approach to try to really tell the story and help people really understand what we do. And some of the videos that we put out are just really illustrative in terms of, you can really not only see it through the graphs and things that we put out on Instagram, but you can just really understand how our business works.
Yeah, I've seen some of that content. You punch above your weight. It's impressive. And the quality of content, it's up there with what we're seeing from the likes of Spotify and Robinhood, who are really leaning into social and communicating directly to their investors. So love to see that. Speaking of social, we've gone through and looked at how are people talking about the AREN group on platforms like X and Reddit. We saw a lot of mentions of earnings, especially on X, people calling it out, doing their own analysis. Can you share a little bit more about the most recent results?
So that was our Q2 results. It was just right around $45 million and top line. We are really, really proud of the earnings and being net income positive and the progress that we've made. And I think it's a really nice sort of moment for us to say, yep, that was a great quarter. And then to put the hat back on and get back to work. So, uh, as we, try to take a longer term view than just one quarter, and know that, the business here is something we just got to build and build and build. And, I like to think of us, closer to the beginning than the end on that story.
Yeah, that makes sense. And keeping those blinders up, we hear that a lot from the CEOs. I think being on these platforms, there's a lot of amateur analysts. Amateur can be a misnomer these days. A lot of these guys have institutional grade toolkits with AI and just the general availability of finance tools. How do you think about those types of analysts on YouTube or X or Reddit? You mentioned being on those platforms and seeing it. Are you taking in the positive and negative, or are you guys just looking more broadly to try to get a pulse of what direction you're moving in from a sentiment standpoint?
Super interesting question. Every once in a while, one of them will reach out to us and they'll say, like, a relative, like someone you might not think is a massive audience, but has a fairly influential, somebody who really covers micro caps or something. I want to sit down, talk. I am always impressed with the care that they take, the questions that they ask, and you'll see a wider range of questions about the business through folks like this. So things like, oh, that's a different perspective than we've heard in the past, or hey, somebody's really curious about, like, hey, what are you really doing on the mergers and acquisition side, or what are you really thinking about how you're controlling cost, or how you do, your growth models are really working. There's kind of two sides. There's every once in a while you'll see something on social media and you'll be like, oh, that's so off. But, we'll let that one not really go with a big response or things like that. And that definitely happens. But a lot of times you'll be like, wow, there's some really, really smart people that have really taken the time to investigate and learn the company and have really, really great questions.
Yeah, it's incredible to see some of the level of diligence and how deep these investors are diving. It's leveling the playing field, and you're getting the same questions often from institutional investors, just happening a lot faster on social. One of the things we saw on social, I think this was on X, were some questions around the share repurchase program. Would love to kind of have you give a explainer on what that is and why you guys have started that program.
Yeah. So we've said we'd spend about $3 million or allocated $3 million for share repurchases. There's a couple of things that, as somebody who's operating a company, that you have in a toolkit, and it comes down to sort of capital allocation, right? We can invest back in our business. You can pay down debt. You can acquire businesses, and you can repurchase your stock. And what you're always trying to find is, like, what is the best way to use that capital for shareholders? And as we've generated cash, we've done things like we paid down a good chunk of our debt. So we've been making some progress on that, which I think makes the business healthier. And we wanted the flexibility to repurchase our stock at prices that we liked. And that really is the genesis behind that. It's a broader capital allocation model. And you say, when we think it's a really good buy, we can repurchase shares.
Super interesting. And I think, again, we're seeing when you guys put out press releases, there's a lot of chatter. There's bots that are resharing and they're just covering certain types of stocks and they're getting it out there. But then there's this commentary underneath. When you guys are writing a press release, particularly a press release related to your financial columns, how are you thinking about that hitting some of these social platforms? Is that something you think about, or maybe there's a supplementary video that you plan to put out? I've seen you do your videos on LinkedIn. How do you guys balance both types of communication?
Yeah, it's funny as a lot of, I think the press releases are important for what, getting your messaging right and understanding the tone of the company. And we really try to say, like, look, we're really, we're being disciplined in our approach, and we want people to understand the fundamentals of the business and understand that we're making money. And I think that's an important piece. But when you really think about, like, how social media works, or how a retail investor finds, like, we don't think of press releases as the primary way for folks to like come and learn about a company. And that's where the storytelling really comes in. And we can connect like our Instagram to our LinkedIn, to our earnings coverage. And, and I think that's just a lot more powerful in terms of how you communicate the progress that the company has done and doing it through storytelling than necessarily, press releases out there for everybody. But we of course will do both.
Yeah, you're seeing a lot more companies. I mentioned Spotify and Robinhood. They're translating the press releases to meet the format that makes sense on the respective platform. And I think you guys are doing that well, where it's a lot of the same information, but you're translating it to LinkedIn or YouTube or Instagram so that it's more consumable and it fits that form factor.
The other kind of, data that we see is that retail investors take a relatively short amount of time, maybe not, like an Instagram clip short, but a relatively short amount of time when they're making investment decisions. And so I do think it is really, really important to provide the kind of context, if you will, around the company and those really key things in a way that's engaging, in a way that lets people know, oh, here's a different business, here's approach. There's, they're modernizing these brands. Oh, they're able to make money again. And I think that those things really do go a long way. And like you said, matching the form factor, Instagram storytelling is a little bit different than
100%. And you're competing against a lot of different content types on these platforms. So grabbing their attention, making sure you're getting across the 1, 2, maybe 3 points as quickly as possible is really the playbook that we're seeing a lot of these companies deploy. Moving to the last few questions, Paul, when you look out at the market, are there companies, maybe companies outside of your industry, that you're looking at for inspiration or business cues or product cues? Who do you look to? And this can be current or past companies that really inspire you and how you're building the Arena Group.
I don't know if it's so much companies as it is like particular leaders and seeing people that are just really, really great communicators, people that take really good care of their employees, people that build businesses responsibly. And I think that those types of folks are really inspirational. And it doesn't necessarily come from big businesses. One of the things about the Arena Group, which I really, really love, is when we really invest in our partners and we want our partners to build successful businesses. And these are folks who are like, they're small businesses, they're entrepreneurs. And when we talked about being in, having IP and managing that, we give publishers the opportunity to build businesses on our platform on top of our IP. And it's really, really rewarding to see folks that were perhaps, someone who's been a journalist with us for years has gone out and said, hey, I'm actually going to hang a shingle. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to run that business creating content on one of the Arena Group properties. And then they're doing things like, supporting their family, paying for their kids to go to college. They're learning about tax planning and doing payroll, and they're growing in ways that you would, you just see what people can do when they're given the opportunity. And we have, handfuls of folks that are running really successful businesses. And I just find a ton of inspiration. And I think, I don't know if are any easy businesses. Probably like I've never found one I'd say is easy, because, if you have employees and payroll and taxes and insurance, you're, and putting out a really great product, that's a tremendous amount of work. And I just find a ton of inspiration from folks that are able to grow those businesses and feed their families and thrive.
I love that. And you more or less answered the next question, but maybe mapping that out 5 years in the future, what are non-financial KPIs that are going to tell you the Arena Group is successful 5 years from now, even 10 years from now? What does that look like in your head?
I think it's the expansion of the model and finding other places. So media is just evolving. And so today we are largely a, digital media company. Text is primarily the content format that we create. what we call EPs are entrepreneurial publishing that are living on our IP, living as part of our brands and growing these businesses, which we talked about. I think there's tremendous opportunity to bring that model to video, to commerce. And I think if we can see the proliferation of empowering small businesses through our IP and these additional, not just distribution channels, like if you think about YouTube and video or e-commerce and all the other different ways you can drive, traffic and transactions. I just think that is, if we are to able to go from 1 to 2 to 3 and to bring this model successfully, I think that would indicate that the Arena Group is going to have a really great future.
I think that's a strong North Star. And then, Paul, we talked about balancing both roles: CEO running the company, CEO, the voice to the market. What do you do when you're not CEOing? What's kind of your hobbies that keep you busy outside of work with, I'm sure, limited time that you have outside of the day job?
I have one daughter who's left as a senior in high school, and my wife and I joke that we had to rededicate ourselves to being parents again, like to remember we still have one kid at home. And
yeah.
I brought her with me everywhere this summer. I just said, I tried to crush her soul. I said to her, I said, she really wants to go into business. And so I said, I brought her with me everywhere this summer, middle of the night flights, meetings, everything. So I've reinvested in spending a lot of time with my daughter. I'm super active in sports. I love, pretty much any sport that you can do: tennis, golf, ride a bike, skiing, walking around the neighborhood, and those types of things. And then, like most people, I eat too much food. That really comes with barbecue. And I have a love for barbecue, and always trying to find great barbecue restaurants. And we'll spend, way too much time marinating meats.
Any favorite spots that people should check out?
Oh, well, and we're talking about Cal Poly and the Central Coast of San Luis Obispo. If folks have not been to Jocko's, which does like oak pit fire barbecue on the Central Coast, that's always a really great, fun local spot from close to where I grew up.
Yeah, San Luis Obispo and Central Coast. There's almost too many options. When I go back there, I gotta have my tri-tip sandwich somewhere. But you can only have tri-tip so many nights in a row.
I spent so much time trying to duplicate the tenderness of the Firestone steak sandwich.
It's impossible. I would hit it.
Yeah, that place is great too.
I had my share of Firestone tri-tips. It's a great sandwich. Well, Paul, I think to wrap things up on our end, we've talked a lot about communicating to the markets and your philosophy and how you think about that, and particularly with retail investors. So if you had a message to retail investors, what would you say? What would be kind of the 1, 2, 3 points that you would share with people interested in their Arena Group as retail investors?
I think as a retail investor, and particularly folks that really want to learn, and it's not just for the Arena Group, it's for any company. It's there's a couple things. One is, don't be afraid to reach out to them. A lot of times you'll find, CEOs, CFOs, other folks that you think may not be accessible. Like, there are people there that you can always talk to and research. So that's one thing. 2 is, is to invest, see what else is out there. Look at the comparables, look at all the different kinds of companies. If you're interested in the media space, Arena Group is a really great one to see, because we are doing things differently than I would say that most other people have approached the business. And then, lastly, I always say is like, when you're investing in individual stocks, and this is myself too, I was like, you just want to make sure that you're actually are investing and you have a good long-term plan. But we're not going to give a financial investing advice beyond that type of thing.
Yeah, I love it. And where can people find you online? Both the Arena Group. I know you have your investor relations page and most of the socials. Anywhere else you want to call out?
Always great to follow me or connect with me on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Well, Paul, this has been a great conversation. Really appreciate the time. Learned a lot about how you guys think about the markets and communications and retail investors. Appreciate the time and looking forward to following along as you continue to build out the company.
Matt, thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Cheers. Thanks for tuning in to Marketopolis, powered by Stakeholder Labs. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss upcoming conversations with the leaders shaping modern investor relations.